Hello, Underdog Leadership Podcast listeners. We are recording season 4, and there's been a little bit of a gap between season 3 and season 4. And I want to say we missed you. Sherry and I, you're going to meet Sherry in a second. We talk about our community a lot. We talk about what they're looking for, what they're craving, and how we at Chavender can meet their needs. So today we're talking about mentorship, and I can't think of a better colleague, a better friend, a better lived experience person to talk about mentorship than Sherry. Welcome, Sherry Schaefer.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I know it's like an extension. I was telling her before we pressed record that it's like she is a vertical experience of mentorship. And you're going to hear more about that. But Sherry, for our listeners, situate yourself in our work and Chavender. Who are you?
Yeah, thanks. You know what? This is a really exciting part of my life and my journey for sure, because I have been working in the healthcare field for 35 years and in fundraising and philanthropy for a good portion of that dedicated to healthcare. And the part that I love when I was doing my master's and doing some of my other education was really about team building and the impact that a team can have on results and on outcomes, right? And how they can make things better in an organization. And when people are working together, or when they feel good about their job, all those pieces of confidence and team building and structure, facilitating special projects, all those pieces are like what they really jazz me. I'm like excited about that part, right? So I spent a lot of years like studying about this piece of it, right? And figuring out, how do you mentor people into that? How do I get mentored? I also was one of those people who wanted to move up and to be able to excel in the projects I was working on, get projects, be seen as someone who could take on a leadership position, even if it was for projects, right? And so how do you do that? Who do you go to? How do you get that support? And mentorship was the answer that I found really helped me. And then in my latter years, I flipped it and started to help others. And and the results of seeing others made me feel good too. I felt great that these people were excelling, and they were believing in themselves, and they could see themselves as leaders. That's exciting, right? So that's the part I love. And so for me, it's a lot of years of experience in doing it, both for myself and for others, and learning about it, trying to really get a grasp of what mentorship can do for an organization and for individuals. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. We kind of done the pendulum has swung to the metrics piece, right? The KPIs and the metrics and the analytics. And I think what you're kind of bringing us back to is, the people are your strongest asset. So finding ways to invest in them. And there are many different ways, obviously, Sherry, and we're going to talk about those.
Yeah.
At Chavender, you run Next Level Talent Development, tell us about that one, just to set it up.
Yeah. So Next Level Talent Development Program is it's a 12 session program over 6 months, designed to be over a bit of time to help people really integrate the things that they're learning into their day-to-day work and their work habits. And the idea is to really focus in on the soft skills of what they're doing, because those soft skills can play out in all the components of the work they're doing. So whether they're working with clients, or they're working with their teammates, or they're working with a board or whoever, those soft skills are what give them the foundation to do the good work, right? And to feel confident and competent in the work they're doing, right? So that program is really key. It focuses in on things like communication and solution strategizing, networking, and negotiating. So there's all different components, and they're building blocks. They start out with, the first topic builds onto the next, to build on till the end, where you really are, you've really developed some good skills that will support you in the work you do. And the great part about it, Jenny, is, we've seen some excellent results, and
I know.
I started doing the math on it, and that really gets me excited too, right? I get fired up. So we're seeing like 55% of the people who've gone through it have moved up into a different role, a more leadership role. And I, as close as I can figure, I think we're close to 80% where people are taking on projects, or being seen as leaders for projects, whether they've moved, whether they've got a new title or a different role,
Yep.
matters not. They're being seen as leaders in their what they're
Yeah.
doing. And that's exciting for me when I see them and I watch them on LinkedIn, or I see
I
that,
know.
I talk to them. I'm like, look at you go. Like, this is
Yeah.
great news, right? And I
Yeah.
think even though soft skills are not easily measured when boards are trying to figure out, does this pay
Mhm.
off in the end? I believe, and this is my belief, and I'm still going to come back to you one
Yeah.
day and prove this, but I believe that 6 months to a year after completion of the program, you will see the dollars coming in. I think
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen some of my, some of the people going through the program who are bringing in bigger dollars. But to put the proof onto paper, that's what I want to do,
Yeah.
is kind of like look at it. But that's what I'm seeing. I just have to, now I want to
Yeah.
nail it down to a little statistical stuff for people. But we're
Well,
seeing the results. So there is an ROI. There is an
yep.
ROI. And even though soft skills are not easy to measure, yeah, you can. We've seen it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great
I
program.
love it's true. And your other point too, the sample size just keeps growing too. So one thing that we pride ourselves, we will get to mentorship. I know we're starting to sound like we're tooting our own horns here, but I think, if you're listening to this podcast, you care deeply about elevating people. Like Sherry and I believe
Yeah.
that the goal here, yes, the goal is to hit your money or hit your targets or complete your
Mm.
strategic plan. But if you can do that in a way that helps elevate and make people better, just a little bit better every day, those habits, the expectations of themselves, not the organization, but them deciding the kind of expectations. And this whole season is called Embracing Ambition, which seems very appropriate.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of dive into the mentorship piece, which is also something Chavender offers as far as, small, medium, and large. When you go to Starbucks and they ask you which kind of coffee you want, and,
Yeah.
pick your own adventure. But maybe we need to back this whole thing up. Let's back this train up all the way to the beginning. Why bother mentoring, Sherry? Tell us what we need to know.
Yeah. So mentoring is one of those components of an organization, or if you want to look at it from an individual standpoint, but it will help to give you that confidence that you're looking for. It brings you networking opportunities. A mentor relationship will support you in your challenges. It will
Mm-hmm.
mentor relationship will support you in your new ideas, How do I move forward? Is this a good idea or is it not a good idea? What am I not thinking about? So those
Yeah.
are the components of what a good mentor relationship will do, where the mentor and the mentee are having good conversation, and the mentee is able to draw on that seasoned professional
Mm-hmm.
that seasoned mentor to help them just critically think through. So that builds their critical thinking as well. And
Yeah.
what's interesting to me is the mentor piece, like what a mentor gets out
Mm-hmm.
of it, right?
A
So a
100%.
mentor, right? So a mentor, what they're getting out of it is they're strengthening their what they know. A lot of things we do when we're seasoned in a job is we just do them automatically. They're just like, oh, well, you just do this, this, and this, and it's done. Or I just get from here to there. And the in between, it's kind of like driving to work. You don't always remember the route, right? But you get there every day,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
right. But with a mentor, I mean, what they're doing is we're asking them to break it down. So where are my turns? Where are the stops? Where are the starts? How do I make
Yeah.
sure that I'm not forgetting pieces, or that I'm talking to the right people, I'm communicating to the right people. And so the mentor has to think through that again. And so it
Mm-hmm.
builds up a strength in them, right? And recall of the
Mm-hmm.
steps and the things that they do know, gives them confidence that they do know what they know, but
Yeah.
also makes them think through and go, well, maybe and sometimes you come up with better ways. You're like,
I
well,
know.
gosh, we've been doing this way for ages, but we could probably do it differently and be better, a little more efficient. So there's some real great positives for being a mentor or a mentee, like both of
Yeah.
them. The relationship is very symbiotic. And I think the benefits for the individual really is about a better communication system within the organization, building confidence, and leadership. We see
Yeah.
leaders come
Yeah.
out of it, right? So, because a
I'm
mentor
I'm
might be
laughing.
someone who's, a mentor might be someone who's only like 5 years in, and they're
Indeed.
mentoring someone who's brand new.
Indeed.
So you're
Yeah.
strengthening their leadership at that point, right? So that's the
Yeah.
cool part. Or it could be someone who's been there 20 years and they're,
Yeah.
they're passing on their wisdom, right?
My takeaway is it's not one way, right? It's a loop,
Oh,
Sherry, that right? It's
yeah.
much more of a loop.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because, and I also think for young people, and I mean that in a don't mean that in a derogatory way, just to be clear. But I remember when I was a new fundraiser, you're gonna laugh, and I'm embarrassed almost to put this on. But anyway, I would send meeting invites to senior folks that I was working with, right? I was junior and I was sending to volunteers, and they would ask me, please send a meeting invite. I'm like, what is this meeting invite thing? Like, I never lived my life on meeting invites as a junior person because I always had time. And
Yeah.
now as a senior level executive, like I don't do it if there's no meeting invite. Like if it's not
Right.
easy.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you can be very myopic as a junior person to not understand the playing field or the context. And that I think is a great, like imagine if I'd had a mentor for me to go, what's with this thing? Like what is this thing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an easy person to go, can you, like, how does this work? Why
Help.
why am I being asked that, right? I think the other
Yeah.
thing that's really key is that, I mean, in Canada and in the States, we're seeing this big movement of,
Yeah.
in Canada, they're calling it the Great Retirement.
Mm.
And, we're seeing this huge loss of knowledge, resource in organizations where these people have been there for years are leaving, and
Yeah.
there's a gap of knowledge, right? And
Yeah.
so if people do mentoring, if there are mentors in their organization, that helps to save and restore some of that knowledge and transfer that knowledge transfer. Any good researcher will tell you the importance of knowledge
Mm.
transfer.
Mm.
And this knowledge transfer is huge, to give sustainability and, and succession, and success to an organization, right? So
Yeah.
that's a
And it's
piece that
not,
I think is also, yeah, important.
yeah, that addressing the great resignation. And it's not just, I think that's one of our themes, right? It's not just the how to do things, but
Yeah.
who you need buy-in with to do things, or the skeleton in the closet. Like, don't use that word with that. I mean, I'm in Ottawa director general because that brings back that other thing,
Yeah.
that strategy piece. It's so much work is so much about culture, attitude.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just a bunch of people that complete tasks in their little envelopes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It melds the organization to be
Yeah.
stronger together
Yeah.
versus siloed. And
Yeah.
right now, I think that's a really important piece as people start to, the whole hybrid model starts to
Yeah.
kind of like level out, back to some component, where people are doing some in, some at home, doing that whole flex thing.
Yeah.
And but what I think the part that got really hard for some organizations is when people were fully, at home, fully
Yeah.
remote. It got really siloed, and they didn't have the same communication, and that's what they're trying. Lots of people are trying to get back to.
Yeah.
So,
Completely.
and this really does help, I think, in lots of ways. Yeah.
And the hybrid workspace is not going away, right? Like it's going to be part of
Oh,
our zeitgeist, and
yeah.
we're going to have to find ways to embrace it. And it's not a happy hour at 4 o'clock on Friday with your team colleagues. Like it's so much more than that. I'm going to throw this analogy that a colleague of mine brought up recently that really kind of helped me understand where we're at in the job field right now. And it's this idea that in the 80s, like think about a car manufacturer. In the 80s, it was all about action, doing your job. In the 90s, we learned that we had to have managers to manage the people doing their jobs. And then in the 2000s, the beginnings, we talked about leadership. We talked about what kind of personal skills and self-awareness and self-actualization and knowing your blind spots. That was what we were talking about. But I think in the 2020s onwards, what people are craving, and of course we are already bought the Kool-Aid here, is coaching, is
Yeah.
direct support, advice, peer mentoring, communities to strategize, to elevate, not to fix or not to tell what to do, but rather create a space for them to be empowered. So I used to say when I was a classical musician, you'd run some sequence on the piano and you'd figure out the fingering for it. That's where your fingers go. And then ideally, the next time you see a passage like that, you already know, Sherry. That's
Yeah.
to me the kind of legs that mentorship has, is it can be replicated once you learn something way somewhere else. Has that been your experience too when talking to clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think for them like that, I mean, when we go back to the soft skills components, right? Like the understanding how best to communicate with, your teammates or the board or
Yeah.
whoever, understanding those components and talking it through with someone who understands the culture and the community within that
Yeah.
organization,
Yeah.
or similar organizations, because sometimes your mentors are not in your same organization. And I
Yeah.
think, understanding those concepts and then practicing them and then getting some feedback and saying, oh, that worked, but no, that didn't work. Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
missed that. I didn't, or I nailed it. I got it. Like that really
Mm-hmm.
helped. Well, that builds that muscle memory that I think you're talking about. And so, gets and gives them that confidence to keep, building on that and strengthening their skills to the point where that's just natural. It's
Yeah.
just is what it is. It's how they naturally can kind of do a quick analysis of how does this person best hear what I'm saying, or what's my best
Mm-hmm.
approach with them, and in a respectful way, because it's not just about like, selling your stuff or whatever, but it's about, about finding that rhythm or that synergy between you to get to a outcome that is good for both, right? And so that mentoring
100%.
piece really helps with that. I totally
Yeah.
think, yeah.
And let's be honest, like all of us listening to this podcast want to spend time mentoring. Like it's not like we're here because we don't want to spend time mentoring. But the reality of the landscape is also that we're asking people to do more with less time. And the demands on senior leaders, I think, if anything, have gone up. And so this concept of building a structure to encourage and support mentorship, but it doesn't actually have to be always on your time in your calendar. And again, to your other point, that mid-level, I think there's so much opportunity out there in
Oh,
mid-level,
crazy. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you think about it, like we talked about the great retirement. Well, that mid level is going to become your senior leadership like quick. And for lots of them earlier than their the previous
Yeah,
people who took them a while to get there. Right. And they had to,
yeah,
but this, the way that it's working with this, all these boomers who are retiring, it's going to leave a big gap, and so this younger mid level is going to move up quick, and so
yeah,
and the other piece is that the leaders who are in place, they don't have the time always to mentor, so that's where the coaching comes in, that's where that
yeah.
external support comes in to put that together. And I think that's really, I mean, there's a couple of things around that. I think coaching, you can have someone who's a coach, a one-to-one coach, or a group coaching, and those kinds of things are in there, which is stuff we do, but at
Mm-hmm.
Chavender. But the other piece is building a mentorship program within, and we
Structure.
also support that mentorship, building a mentorship program within your organization. Whether it's, we give you a good framework and you have like this grassroots kind of thing that you then try to, roll out yourself, or you have, we support you deeper and
Mm-hmm.
more
Facilitating,
involved
right?
and more engaged. Yeah, more facilitation. So then that takes it off your plate, so that we're doing
Yeah,
the labor, the hard work on it, and getting it going so it becomes a solid program in your
yeah,
organization, and building it into your succession plan, right?
yep,
Like
yep.
you need to have a succession plan. And this is here's the thing, the Fortune 500 companies, they have 84% of them who are listed as Fortune 500 have a mentorship program, right? And
Wow, you're
I know,
kidding.
and the top 100 are 100% have a mentorship program in their
Huh?
organization. That's the stats. So if you want to build an organization that's sustainable, that's going to
Yeah,
grow and keep excelling,
yeah,
like it's a no-brainer. You got to have a
yeah,
mentorship program, you know?
yeah. The analogy I was going to use here also really speaks to build from within. So let's pretend we're not an organization, we're a hockey team. Okay. So all of a sudden you're thinking of yourself as a hockey team. You kind of have two choices. You buy the talent, right? You
Yeah.
you you pull from somewhere else, you bring them in. It takes them 6 months, whatever. Maybe it's a great fit. Like granted, right? We have a senior VP that comes in, so you buy them in, or you build it from within. And I
Yeah.
guess the question is, what kind of hockey team do you want to be? Because when you have a hockey team that grows up together, and when you have an organization that grows up together, they don't have to go elsewhere to get the experience and the salary to be able to come back in. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of that where people get stuck. It's hard. I want to just send out a love note to all the small shops being like 10 and
Yeah.
under, right? It's hard to create opportunities for people. But I think that idea of building it from within, and helping them see themselves into other roles and setting up that mentorship experience. I like, if you think of the university as an example, going and doing a secondment in prospect research, or going and doing a secondment on alumni affairs, or somewhere
Yeah.
completely different administratively. To your point, you don't lose the corporate knowledge, Sherry. They come
Yeah.
back richer and fuller and with more context to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and think about it, the people, how to work within the organization. So like in my case, here's the thing. In my case, I was in the same organization for 30 plus years, right? And so when I got to the my executive level, I mean, I knew exactly who the movers and shakers were in each of our centers, right? And I could go and talk to them and go, hey, like, what's the scoop? What's happening? Or
Mm-hmm.
I just want to do this thing. This is the project. Who's the best person to talk to? Oh, yeah. And it might not always be the
Yep.
managers who are over, they're full, their plates are full. And some of these leaders, if we can give if these, frontline leaders,
Mm-hmm.
within their peer as a peer leader, if we give them these projects and this work, sometimes you see them like it's amazing how they excel, and you're like, but that's the component of doing it within your organization is understanding and knowing. I mean, that's the strength of it is the organization, and
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
can it's all you leverage the talent, right? You leverage
Yeah.
the talent that's within the
You
organization
leverage the
to make
talent.
it
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
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 And that I believe in you statement, right? Like, I want you to be
Yeah.
part of this mentorship program. I believe in you. I believe in your skills. There's so many other like side effects here as far as benefits to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I maybe at this point, if they've listened this far, Sherry, they're bought in. They,
Yeah.
they understand the value of it. Usually the objections are things like time, money, energy. Is it built into the strategic plan or not? So at a very base level, like the lowest level for someone listening, what could they do having listened to this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think really there's a couple things. You can identify your potential leaders and
Okay.
get them hooked in with coaching or with a group coaching thing like Next Level Talent. The other piece I think is building a mentoring program, like and when
Yeah.
you think about it, we have a framework that we share with people, and it's basic, and you can pick a
Very
person who's going to
easy.
lead it,
Yeah.
and will support you, to get it started, to kickstart a mentoring program.
Something, Sherry. Like, I really
Yeah,
want them to
just
feel like they can
just
do
something.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very low investment for sure, like cost wise.
Yeah.
It's like so low.
We should
But
talk
at
about
least
that. We should talk
we
about
should
that.
talk about that. But the thing is, I think because you and I believe in, like, we want to elevate people. I
I
mean
know.
that's our dopamine hit, right? Is that we
Totally.
see that, like, when we see people growing and excelling, we're like, whoo, okay, we did something good here, right?
I
So,
know.
I mean, we don't charge a lot for that framework, to be honest. But it's the next piece is, I think, like, where you don't want it to be something that's on the side of someone's desk, and if that's what
Totally.
it's going to be, then put a little extra investment in, which is still very low cost, I will say,
Mm-hmm.
but put that little extra in. Let us help you set it up,
Yeah.
at least the first 6 months, or the first round of it, or the first year. A good mentoring program, you curate the pairs,
Yep.
better support. For sometimes it's because the mentor needs to work on their leadership, and sometimes it's the mentee, or both, right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so you curate those pairs, you support them with some extra knowledge, in to
Yeah.
that. You support them in understanding their role of listening, their role of supporting, of giving some guidance, but letting people try things. So you support them on that, on how you become a mentor, or how best to be a mentee, like to get the most out
Yeah.
of it as a mentee, right? And then you measure that success and see how that works, right? And then you do another round. And some of
Yeah.
those mentees move into mentors, right? And so
Yeah.
that builds your system so that it's continual, it's cyclical,
Yeah.
and you're constantly building that mentorship
So
program. So
uh,
that's what I would do.
love it.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So I want to pick up on a couple things. There's an accountability, right? When you hire someone to
Yeah.
make the program robust. I think your other point about measurement, right? Like actually
Yeah.
measuring what's the impact of this? How did it go? It's so easy for us to go on to the next project. Would you say the average mentorship cycle is about 6 months? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean that's what the studies say. We've seen that
Okay.
in our the groups we've done mentorship with. But 6 months seems to be a good cycle, and then some of those mentor-mentee relationships they carry on, and
Yeah.
or they take on. Like there's three types of mentors, right? There's the being a mentee, and getting mentorship from somebody else. There's peer mentorship where you're supporting
True.
your colleagues, right? So there's good peer
That's a
mentorship,
good
which
point,
is
Sherry. That's
yeah,
so true. I've forgotten. Yeah,
yeah.
that's like equal, right? Equal peer mentorship,
Yeah.
like being a
Yeah, and
sounding.
they're supporting each other and there's some good support there. And then there's mentoring, so the mentor who mentors to a newer staff person, being a peer mentor, and then receiving mentorship. And even as a executive level, you really need to have a mentor to support you, because gosh, who do you go to? You need some
Yeah.
support. So whether that's a coach or some a
Yeah.
trusted senior advisor or somebody like that you can get some mentoring from, because your pool of peers gets smaller as you go up the chain, right? So you need to have,
Yeah.
but you still need those supports. You're still getting challenging times and challenging situations that you're having to deal with, right? So I
Yeah.
mean that's those three levels. And I think the benefits are key, like you talked about onboarding. I mean, onboarding success, if if you can get people to stay for more than 5 years, that the reason they stay is because they feel that they are supported. And
Mm-hmm.
onboarding with mentors helps. I mean, I remember when I was starting in university, in my undergrad, and we had a buddy system. So the fourth years mentored the first years, third and fourth years mentored the first years, which was great because, well, you found out where all the good drinking holes were, or
The
which were
bad
the costs
professors.
and how, right? Yeah, all those
Yes,
things.
totally.
The great professors, for those who are out there, But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that onboarding is really key if you want to keep your people,
Mm-hmm.
and the turnover in what we're seeing in the new staff that are coming into organizations is short. Like it's 2 to 3 years,
Yeah.
unless they feel secure and supported in their organization. So that's really key. And that kind of segues into the job satisfaction and retention. You want people to stay and
Yeah.
build your organization. That retention matters, right? So that's the other piece. And then of course the leadership piece that we've talked about quite a bit here in succession planning. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so those three kind of
And
are big.
I love that. And, not everybody stays. I just want to say that it's not like I used to think it was a failure when people left, right? But that being said, if they've had a good experience and they've grown
Mhm.
up and out of the organization and they go somewhere and speak highly of where they were, I mean, isn't that important? And I guess my other real kind of aha here in this conversation is we're really good at figuring out at valuing outputs and actions and
Mm.
productivity. But
Mm.
how do you put a price on someone's network? How do you put a price on someone's ability to work with others, corporate knowledge, let's call it strategic acumen? Those are also super important, and they become more and more important as we go up the food chain, Sherry.
Yeah, no, for sure they do. And I mean, you bring people on, not, you're right, not just because of their, in fact, the thing is, I think most people, when they're looking at potential employees, when they're doing the interviews, it's the soft skills that they're looking for. It's the
I
it's
know.
the what are they bringing to the table versus do they have the exact
Yeah.
task knowledge base that we can teach those things. Those are teachable, right? So that,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I mean, people are doing their resumes to align what they previously learned for application, like how can I apply and transfer, right? That transfer. But soft skills and strength and leadership and those
Mhm.
pieces, they apply to everything. That's the
They
most important thing.
do.
I know.
I think it's perfect to kind of close with one of my favorite quotes from Marshall Goldsmith, who wrote, "What got you here won't get you there." And it's the concept that once you get to, and if you're listening to this podcast, you know, the theme is embracing ambition. It's all about helping people be a little bit better than they were yesterday. And specifically number twos becoming number ones. You know, once you step into that sort of elite circle at the table, everybody has the skills. Like there's no weaknesses. In other words, everybody, whether it's the accountant and the HR person and the communications person, all those folks, program people, like they
Yeah.
all have the chops. It really becomes their ability and the nuance to work with those people strategically, smartly, and collaboratively, to your point about teams. I
Yeah.
think that's where the rewards come with work. But don't assume just because you're a kick-ass accountant you're going to be able to contribute unless you leave your ego at the door, in my personal opinion, and you're willing to step up and listen and engage and add those soft skills to your toolkit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it really is about building that team. You know, I come back to what I
Yeah,
really, what really jazzes me is that team building. And when you have a strong team, you will see success.
that's
You
right.
know, that's the way it is, right? So,
And it's
yeah,
fun. And
I
it's
know
fun,
you like
Sherry.
working. I know, and you're excited. Yeah, like
Well,
we
and
are.
Sherry and I, yeah, exactly. And full disclosure with Chavender, you know, I always said to Sherry, my goal with Chavender was to have great team meetings. That was why I set up the business. And I have to say, just on a personal note, it's just so delightful to have you. I was by myself for a long time, folks, and having Sherry, ironically, we are exactly the same Enneagram type. Which we're going to be doing some podcasts about, but we are very similar. We love to
Yeah.
brainstorm. It's such a delight. It's such a delight to have you in the business. I just want to say that publicly. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I mean, I think you're the role that you've been playing for so long as a support to organizations. I mean, that's what
Yeah,
got me excited and me want
yeah,
to be part of it. So, it goes
yeah,
both ways.
exactly.
Anyways, yes, yeah.
Awesome. So, listen, everybody, thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope we've enlightened you a little bit about mentorship. If you have any questions, really, mentorship and succession planning are Sherry's sweet spots. She runs all of our mid level programs. And I just want to say again, there's something for everyone. We want to be the kind of organization that if it's your first time out, we have something to meet your needs for mentorship. If you're looking for a little bit more hands on, we have that. And if you're looking for someone to run it, we absolutely can do that as well. And that's the beauty, I think, of being I've been calling us a um, talent enhancement company lately, because it's not just development, it's enhancing. And I'd really like us to be known as humans first, like people first, kind of an organization. When you develop the people, all the good things happen. When you believe in them, all the good things happen. It's not rocket science, but it's amazing how we try to widgetize people to our organizational or shareholder benefit, I guess, you
Yeah.
know? Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sherry. Um, Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. Listen, if you enjoyed this podcast, A, share it with someone that you think has been talking about mentorship, or B, please do hit subscribe. We keep track of that. It means a lot. It helps us get access to new audiences and to bring these messages to others. And we really are keen to empower people with this information and data. So thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Take care.